Hello. Today I'm going to talk about air pollution. We hear a lot about this topic in the news, and it is one which everyone seems to be aware of. But alas, one problem which everyone seems to assume is someone else's responsibility to solve. But, on a brighter note, the world came together in 2016 to agree on what is called the Paris Agreement, which aims to stop global temperatures from rising by more than 2.5 degrees. Joyous scenes when the final agreement was made in Paris, because the big polluters, the USA, China and India, originally did not really want to cut their emissions, in the case of China and India, because of their growing economies, because their growing economies cause a lot of pollution. Their industries, cause a lot of pollution. And to slow down these industries means a slowing of their economies. However, they signed up to the agreement. Slightly less in the news, mainly because of other world events at the time, was a UK High Court ruling, and it's that which I will talk about today. I'll firstly look at the High Court judgment, and then the nature of the problem. Thirdly, what the government's original plan was, and finally what might happen and what I think needs to happen as a result of the court ruling. Firstly then, the judgment itself. In November 2016, the High Court in the UK decided that the UK government's policy on reducing air pollution was too weak. It did not go far enough in tackling the problem. So the High Court ruled that the government must, by law, cut the illegal levels of nitrogen oxide in dozens of towns and cities in the shortest possible time. The case was brought to court by lawyers from the Client Earth organisation. Secondly then, the problem. Unless you're a science student or scientist, you might not be familiar with nitrogen dioxide, so I'll explain that first. This is a gas which can damage your health. In cities, it is a particular problem as it's emitted from motor vehicles, cars, buses and lorries, especially those which run on diesel fuel, so especially buses and lorries. As you may know, I cycle to work, and the last place I want to be on a bicycle is behind a bus or an old diesel-powered car. The black smoke is pretty horrible. 40% of the nitrogen dioxide in the air is caused by motor vehicles. Hence, reduce that and the air will be significantly cleaner. Now, air pollution causes about 50,000 early deaths every year and costs the economy over £27 billion every year. Even in a relatively small city like Leicester, it's estimated that air pollution kills 250 people every year. And pollution is linked to the following health issues, and this is quite a long list, so bear with me. Heart attacks, strokes, lung and bladder cancers, low birth weight, poor memory and attention spans in children, low verbal IQ, faster cognitive decline among elderly people, and the earlier onset of dementia. So we can clearly see that this is a problem worth tackling. Which brings me to point 3, what the plan was going to be to tackle it. Now, in December 2015, the government issued details of their plans to reduce emissions of nitrogen oxide. I'll quote from this plan. So under this plan, by 2020, the most polluting diesel vehicles, old polluting buses, coaches, taxis and lorries will be discouraged from entering the centres of Birmingham, Leeds, Southampton, Nottingham and Derby. Newer vehicles that meet the latest emission standards and private cars will be unaffected. End quote. Note in the quote the word discouraged, and the fact that private cars will be unaffected. Discouraged doesn't mean very much, does it? Ask people not to drive polluting buses and lorries into city centres. Remind car drivers that their cars might be a bit dirty. But that's not really going to help very much. At peak travel times, it's common to find air pollution at 3 or 4 times the legal limit. The EU legal limit is 40 micrograms of nitrogen oxide per cubic metre air, and many cities breach this every day. So let's turn then to the new plan. Well, right now there isn't one. The government has promised to discuss with Client Earth a new timetable for a more realistic pollution reduction down to the legal levels, but that is all for the moment. So the problem, as I see it, is one which affects many democracies. In a democratic state, the politicians are elected every 4 or 5 years, and they always have the next election in their mind when they create new policies and new laws. An unpopular law is guaranteed to lose you votes. Any law which is passed that reduces car use or makes driving simply too expensive is always going to result in losing an election. Why? Well, because the people who vote also drive. They drive to work, they drive to the shops, they drive to the gym, they drive everywhere. A car nowadays is not only desirable, it's regarded as a necessity. Now, I've lived in a few countries over the years, and in some a car was necessary because of a lack of public transport, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia being 2. In other countries, a car was not necessary as the public transport was excellent, the Czech Republic being a good example. Now, I'm afraid that the UK is one of the former. When I moved back to the UK in 2008, I think, I bought a car within a week because the public transport was so unreliable and so expensive. It seemed cheaper to buy a car and to run it than to take public transport, and certainly more convenient. Waiting at a bus stop for 40 minutes on a cold December evening is not fun. I'll just outline an example of my current commuting options, which is a 15-mile journey, so 30 miles a day. The train. It takes 20 minutes, but it's £12.50. Plus I have to walk for 20 minutes to the station. I could take the bus, but that takes nearly 1.5 hours at peak time. But it's only about £4. Driving takes about an hour. So the train is quick, it's the quickest, but it's stupidly expensive. The bus is incredibly slow, although, as I said, it's quite cheap, only about £4. Driving is kind of the best of both. It's the best alternative, it seems. It's quick enough, it's about 55 minutes, and it's not very expensive. Perhaps £25 a week on petrol. That's why I cycle to work. It takes less than an hour, and it costs nothing, except for my bike and the clothes I wear. And it keeps me fit and healthy. The only thing to worry about is the nitrogen dioxide that all the buses, cars and trucks are pumping into the air. So could the government do more to reduce pollution by discouraging driving and encouraging drivers onto public transport? Unfortunately, I doubt it, because that would be basically political suicide. Well, we'll see what happens. Thank you.